going to be speaking about something which some people may consider as pretty elementary. Some people would say that they're never really given that too much thought. But if we look at where we're heading now and where we've come from, it doesn't look like we're heading for a utopia, does it? It looks like we're very much heading for a dystopia, in view of the fact that we all seemingly are becoming more hateful of one another, less tolerant. We all want the world to be exactly how we want it to be. We're becoming very childlike in our demands and our expectation from the world and from our culture, from our countries and from our fellow man in general. We're all very, very demanding. We're demanding that they all think like us and they all act like us and they all do what we do or else. And this is where we find ourselves, with the level of hate that you can see going on all over the globe. I've said to you before in another video in relation to Britain's stance with Stasi Starmer. You see, when you look at Stasi Starmer, the British Prime Minister, we may think that it's very dictatorial, very oppressive and very fascist-like, but maybe there are people with a far greater vision that can see that, okay, it's going to appear to be pretty oppressive, it's going to appear to be pretty dictatorial, but the option of allowing the current state of humanity to run free with what they consider is a virtue, their freedom of speech, their freedom to hate upon each other, and their freedom to cause division, well, where's that going to lead us? It isn't going to lead us anywhere good, is it? Just because we're free to call every Tom, Dick and Harry cunt, and we can call for their murder and assassination, is that a virtue of society? It isn't, is it? There's something very, very wrong with the psyche of a society which thinks that is important, and we should hang on to that. We should hang on to levels of freedom of speech, but it has to be curtailed, it has to be reasonable, it cannot just be say what the fuck anybody wants to say. Because lots of things cause a great deal of distress, and lots of the words that people say are being deemed to be they're deemed to be giving license to people to take action in a violent way, i.e. the Charlie Kirk shooter. These people coming out of university, very deranged, very dangerous. The dude that shot at Trump, wow, you know, it's a very similar sort of circumstance, wasn't it? Young guy, misguided guy. This is what's happening to the fragile minds and psyches of society. And I think the British government can see where it's going and has to curtail that. It has to curtail that because it's its job to keep order. And so to nip it in the bud and to set a precedent where 80-year-old men get 2 years in prison just for tweeting this and the other, you know, a few thousand people to keep many millions in control. The government's job is to keep control, people. Oh my word. This was a little bit of a spinny with all different sorts of briar, brambles and plants and everything, and it had many fungi in here. And albeit it looks more aesthetic now and it's under control, it was getting a bit wayward. And when I was looking for the fungi, I was having to fight through 4-foot stingers and, you know, inch-thick briar and this, that and the other, and it wasn't ideal. So now the fungi will still be there, the spores will still be in the ground, and they'll be much more accessible. And so, well, goodness me, there was about a dozen or 15 species that I found in this little area here. And so, well, I'm very much looking forward to being able to pick them in the greatest of simplicity. Well, what can we say about this then? The local government keeping order when things started to get a little bit out of hand, a little bit chaotic. So the government came in with its machines and radically cut everything back to within an inch of its life. Now then, funny how I see this and draw this conclusion. It's very much like what Jesus was doing, always speaking in simple terms, using illustrations to keep order and to keep our minds thinking in correct ways. Now, the British government being very, very austere and being ridiculed and challenged by lots of people around the world because in their infinite wisdom and their stupidity, they think having the freedom to call for another man's murder, like people are saying that Trump should be assassinated. Trump is a fascist. You've got the opposition, you've got the Democrats, you've got people in positions of power which are saying these things to millions of people, and then they think that no one's going to pick up a rifle because they've already been given license by their minions, by their worshippers, by their adherents and their followers. When your leader is calling the opposition a fascist and evil and worse than Stalin, worse than Genghis Khan, Pol Pot and all the rest of it, well, what are these young fucking minds going to do? Maybe they'll think, well, they'll be a hero, they'll be the saviour, they'll kill this man and save everybody else. They'll become very Jesus-like, in that sort of way of thinking. And somebody has to take strong armed measures against this to warp and radicalise the train of thought. Now, the next thing they should do, if they're really serious about doing this, is completely radicalise the universities, because it's the universities which is the biggest problem. Because the universities are churning out ill-informed and non-critical thinking youth, and this youth is going to be when they grow up to be in positions of power, parliament and maybe generals and police chiefs and all these sort of things. And if they have had this very radicalized way of thinking, they think very partisan like, they will never take into consideration any other perspectives because they haven't been endowed with a level of acceptance and critical thinking and reasoning. How many people are coming out of university without studying reason? It's becoming pretty spooky, people. So I tend to like to look at things from as many perspectives as I can, and lots of my viewers, they don't like that because they are tunnel vision. And when I said in a previous video that I have no adherence to truth or facts, well, anyone who isn't living in fear would think like that, because they've got nothing to fear, so they don't fear the other man's opinions, you see. But if you fear another man's opinions, if you fear another political party's opinion, then the last thing you want to hear is another opinion, isn't it? And so how many of you are all, yes, there is truth and this is truth and they're lying to us, Are you saying that there's no truth and they're not lying to us? Well, they're doing this and they're doing that and they're doing something else. Well, we can look at what they're doing in a million ways. And if you evolve consciously, then you'll look at what they're doing, just like what I've just done. I've just looked at the Starmer government and suggested to you that it may just be another way. It may turn out to be better. And in 10 years' time, when Britain has crushed the freedom of speech, the freedom of hate speech, let's just say, it's not about crushing freedom of speech, is it? It's about crushing the freedom of hate speech. We're in very difficult times because we've got this mass influx of foreign bodies into our land, and of course that's always going to cause xenophobia, and it's always going to upset the apple cart. So because we've got drastic measures at this moment in time, for whatever reason, because the population isn't increasing, because nobody wants to do these menial tasks, whatever it is, because we've got an obligation to all these countries that we've used and abused in the past, it is what it is. We've got these people here, and you know, like sensible people say, look, there's only a small fraction of these people that do actually perpetrate heinous crimes, and so we can't tar them all with the same brush. But that's what fear does, you see. Fear will do that. Fear will pigeonhole everything. And once you get into that loop fear, then there's little getting out. And so, we have to think more critically. We have to be more reasonable. And we can't afford to have too many wagers on any particular horse. We have to keep open. And if you always want to be a winner, then you're always going to spread your bet over many horses, aren't you? And you're not going to favour any particular one over and above the other, because you're only looking for the best possible outcome of any particular race. And so if you've got all your eggs in one basket, then the chances are, unless you're very, very well informed or lucky, you're not going to win. But if you hedge your bets and you place a wager on 5 of the most likely horses, then you're going to win on some level. And so you're not going to lose your money, are you? So this whole critical thinking thing is a thing of the past, and the way the world's set up by these consortiums of trillionaires who have hijacked the media, social media as well as legacy media, and they are just overtly propagandizing the nation. And you've got one side saying this and you've got the other side saying that, but like, you know, intelligent people say, these people that are saying this and that, like, let's just say the media moguls that own the legacy media. Well, you've got left structured newspapers, and you've got right-leaning structured newspapers, apparently, but they are owned by the same company, the same people. And so their endeavour of both of these papers is to manipulate, guide and herd the masses. And so whether you pick up one which is red or the other one which is blue, they're both the same fucking bird, people. The two wings of the same bird. And so we have to learn to think critically to rise above this. And you know, there's a few people out there now who are learning to do this, and they're telling the masses. You know, I watch a lot of Russell Brand and Candice Owens and Jordan Peterson, and you know, people like Candice Owens, you know, they've got the greatest of balls and the greatest of insight. And there must be a funeral on. And so they are promulgating, giving the masses the opportunity to wake up and you know, lose their biases, for goodness sake, just be broad. And it's always good to listen to the opposition, to see where they're coming from with their perspective, because then you can see things from both sides, and then you can ask yourself, well, what really are they fighting over? They're all human beings, they all want safe societies and, you know, decent incomes and this, that and the other. So what is it that's causing the division? Well, you look for the root of that, and then you'll see, well, it's the imposition and generation of hate and division. And some people will say, look, you Democrats and you Republicans, you have vastly more in common than the people who are leading you, the people who you're advocates for. The man in the street that's got a red flag and you've got a blue one, you too should get a resolve on your issues, because you're the ones that are the target of these so-called leaders that you are worshipping. They don't have your interest at heart. They are nothing like you. They live lives nothing like you. They're vastly outside of the way in which you live. And as soon as you realise that, the better. And then you come together in communities and you use your decency and your rational application, and you sit down devoid of emotion, and you think things through logically, rationally, reasonably, like we used to in the old days. But you see, these days is these fires of jealousy and hate and envy and bigotry, they're being stoked up by this machine. And this machine doesn't care for you at all. This machine is hell-bent on your enslavement. And it's rapidly, like a croupier, with outstretched arms, pulling in all the chips. Because the croupier always wins, whilst the gambler invariably always loses. They may win now and again, short wins, but they're always going to win in the long run, because the game is rigged. And so we need to consider this, people. We need to look at what we're doing. And for those of you who have a higher state of consciousness, a little bit more intelligence than the masses in the herd, then you'll be able to do that. And if at all, then you might want to put yourself in a position whereby you can start to impart a little bit of your wisdom and insight for other people to listen to, like what I'm doing now. I don't support no reds or no blues. I have no horse in any race, and I don't care who wins or loses, because winning and losing is just an illusion. We're all human beings, and we've all got lives to live, and things tend to have a propensity to come and go, like Mexican waves. The Mexican wave will sweep this way, then it will sweep that way. That's what things do. That's what consciousness does. It brings about, these feelings, because consciousness is learning itself. Consciousness is evolving, you would think. And so consciousness tries all these different sorts of things with nations and now on a global scale. It's new territory. We don't know what to expect. We've never been here before, or have we? If we have been here before, then, like some people speculate, we've brought about our demise, and we've gone right back again to Stone Age times, where we've forgotten everything that we ever accomplished in a technological way, and we're starting all over again. And maybe that's the fate of the human being, because they aren't intellectually evolved enough to be able to make it past this point of self-destruction. And so when we listen to people like philosopher Nick Bostrom with his simulation hypothesis, the logic of that hypothesis states that we are actually in a simulation, because we couldn't make it beyond. We either killed ourselves, or we got so technologically advanced that it was a natural progression to simulate ourselves, probably because we're always going to kill ourselves. And so that would then state that there is no reality here, there's no physical reality, and that's what our quantum physicists have been telling us for 120 years. So the simulation hypothesis is logically irrefutable. Anyway, think about that, guys and girls.